Hello and welcome to the Wednesday, it's Wednesday, right?
It is.
Edition of the Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who, much like DeAndre Yedlin, his move is complete. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, I think it's similar because the move is official, but then you have to do all the unpacking, settling, getting used to your situations, and hopefully securing a starting lineup / working air conditioning, maybe? It's the same thing?
Same thing,
Yeah.
So we talked about Yedlin's move to Newcastle on yesterday's show.
We did.
That is now signed, sealed, delivered. Mm-hmm. He's yours.
Yep.
Newcastle, yeah, he is there. If you want to hear about sort of Yedlin's prospects at Newcastle, I recommend listening to yesterday's show because we really go into who his competition is, what happened to that guy, and where Daryl Yanmat's gone.
Yeah.
But basically it looks good, right? For all the details, see yesterday's show.
Yes. I will add the quick caveat that it looks like some Newcastle fans think he's being signed as a backup. So we shall see what happens.
To Jesus Gomez?
Yes.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Jesus Gomez better lose some weight and get fit then.
Yeah. More on that in yesterday's show.
On today's show, we are going to talk politics, loan moves, languages, and newbies.
If you add the A from languages, you get PLLAN, so you got plan.
So we have a plan.
There you go.
Yeah, today is Listener Questions Day.
Yep.
Shall we get going with the first one?
Yeah, not a hot issue at all.
Yeah, let's start with a hot issue.
Sure.
Ryan Hand.
Yeah.
Ryan Hand emailed to ask us, I'm keenly interested in politics and soccer, and I'm wondering if you can speak to how political divisions in society have intersected in the past or present with club support in England.
Right.
Taylor, I'm going to let you take this one first.
Sure, because I'll say that it seems on the surface like a loaded question with lots of different answers and lots of different obvious affiliations. And you think about it, and I feel like England is one of the few countries where there aren't a lot of overlaps between soccer clubs, large groups of soccer supporters, and political divisions.
Yes, it's a weird thing, right? So we think of other teams, I think specifically in Argentina. I know Boca Juniors in Buenos Aires are these sort of working class central city team, whereas River Plate are the sort of more bourgeois, move to the suburbs kind of team. And that's literally reflected in, not literally, it's figuratively reflected in where the stadiums are located.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have those divisions in, say, Argentina.
Right. And then Rome, for example, Lazio, traditionally the right wing. If you're right wing, you support Lazio. If you're left wing, you tend to support Roma.
Yep.
So you have those types of connections in the Middle East, in Turkey, in Eastern Europe, and the Balkans. Those are very common. And then you get into some of kind of religious political affiliations once you get to areas like Scotland, obviously. I think Belgium as well. But really in England, not so much.
Yeah, and I really sort of racked my brains for this. There's no obvious one. The first thing that came to mind is Liverpool Football Club and how Liverpool fans will be very unlikely to vote Conservative. And that's for two reasons. The Conservative government of the 80s sort of was not popular in Liverpool for sort of cuts and the way that affected the area. And then there was a Conservative government in charge when Hillsborough happened, and there was the actual cover-up and the blaming of the fans. And you had Bernard Ingram, who was, I think, the secretary of the Conservative Party at the time, calling Liverpool fans yobs. So there's a whole history there of Liverpool fans will not vote Conservative, and that's going to be for generations and generations. But outside of that, that's like a specific event that turned a specific group of fans off to a specific party. There's no historic affiliation, and I think it's because soccer is a working-class sport.
Right.
And so that's how it is.
They tend to vote Labour then, right? Is that how it works?
No, I think it's so ingrained in society that it's not as if along comes the affluent club for the rich people, because it just started out this working class thing, so all the working class people were in on it. And so the club itself doesn't have an affiliation with one party or another.
Right. I guess where I'm coming from with that, though, is Ferguson, Sir Alex Ferguson, for example, is a huge backer of Labour, right? But I've always heard that was not soccer related. That's because he grew up in the docks, right? The dock area, and so that's kind of what his background is working class. So he votes Labour.
He would have been in the union for the dock workers in Govan, I believe is where he was, in Glasgow. Yeah,
that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yes. So I mean. But
that doesn't mean that Manchester United are then a Labour club, right? There's no long-term, even though he's a gigantic figure, there's no long-term affiliation with a political party for Manchester United.
Exactly. The only thing I guess you could say is that maybe certain supporters groups, certain hooligan ultra groups maybe in England tend to identify more so with right-wing political.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in the 80s, you could say that the more, like, the worst of hooligans, and I'm not even going to name teams except for maybe Millwall, those sort of right-wing hooligan types, they would have some crossover with, like, National Front, which is essentially the British Nazi Party. Like, it's a very, I want to say, like, Britain first, white supremacist kind of thing.
Yeah.
But even that, it's unfair to then say that's right-wing and therefore they vote Conservative, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just true of more, like, hooligan, skinhead, Nazi types tend to drift towards Nazi-type parties.
Yeah.
Right?
And honestly, this is kind of getting away from that for a second, but when I was doing the Red Bulls quiz for our last Roughneck sponsored show, and I was talking about how they were like the initial supporters group that kind of folded into the Empire Supporters Club was like something firm. And like they ended with a firm, and that just instantly like hit me the wrong way. Like, no, don't call yourself a firm. That's a bad idea. You're not the ICF. Let's calm down here. And I think that's kind of a welcome difference for me with a lot of the supporters groups here in the United States, that they seem to really kind of tend to promote progressive values, and you see a lot more rainbow flags. I don't see a lot of maybe those Millwall groups that we're talking about flying rainbow flags.
But even here in the US, I feel like it's similar in that there aren't like traditionally Republican teams or Democrat teams, right?
No.
It's more because probably there aren't two teams in one city, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in some places there are, but I think even then it's not necessarily political.
But it's not like NYCFC isn't the Democrat team and New York Red Bulls are the Republican team. You know?
I think what I would say is maybe in England it's sort of similar to what happens in the United States, where
Cosmos are the third-party ticket.
There you go. Nice. Where the team is maybe is more of an identifier. So like San Francisco, a very blue area in the country, tends to be maybe a more left-wing team, if you want to put it like that. Not the organization itself, but maybe the fan base as a whole.
But now we're just talking about geography more than like club values,
yeah, exactly,
right?
exactly. So that's the only thing I would say, is that maybe it's more of like geography than history of politics being ingrained in the club.
And I think what I'm getting at then is because soccer starts off as a working class sport, right? And is in England, I'm talking about. And obviously has become more middle class over time as tickets have become outrageously expensive and TV subscriptions have become expensive. But because it starts out working class, there wasn't like, here's the working people's team and here's the rich person's team. Because the rich people were just like, I'm going to play polo and maybe cricket. I am not touching this this oafish sport. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there was never that division to begin with, and so that's why there's no team in different cities that, as I understand it, are identified with different classes.
Right.
Unless I'm wrong, it may be that there's someone out there who is a Hartlepool fan who has very specific affiliations because the team has very specific affiliations. Yeah. I would love to know. If I'm wrong about this, I would love to know from fans of those teams.
That makes sense to me.
Contact@TotalSoccerShow.com.
And Ryan and anyone else who wants to read more about this, maybe not necessarily about England, but other areas where politics, culture have all informed the background of clubs. The two books that come to mind most readily, the one that I think a lot of people would recommend is How Soccer Explains the World, I think it is. I always forget if it's world or universe. But that's Simon Couper, I think. And that's just kind of those, like, you get the one about Serbia, you get the Old Firm Derby. And then is Ian Goldblatt, right? He wrote
David
Goldblatt, thank you, wrote The Ball is Round.
Yep.
And that one, you get a lot of history as to like the differences between AC Milan and Inter Milan and what they were, and a lot of the differences in the Brazilian clubs.
Milan is the working class team and Inter is the richer team.
Yeah. And they're the ones who like were more welcoming, I guess, of foreigners, which is why they're Internacional. Okay. Yeah, so you get those sort of backgrounds of the different clubs and what they stand for. That's where I first learned about the Dinamo connection. That's very important in a lot of different ways. So those are two worth checking out.
All right, Ryan, thank you for the question. And again, if anyone has any counter-examples to my idea that soccer is kind of apolitical in England, please let us know.
There you go. Next up.
Second question was not emailed to us.
It was not.
It was asked verbally to Taylor from Patrick Kennedy, our friend Patrick.
Patrick Kennedy is a
friend, listener, teammate.
Exactly. He's been with us since the WRIR days. It's like 7 years of listening. And basically, he and I were talking about something else. And he's like, oh, by the way, I'm a $10 a month subscriber and I've never asked a question, but I've got one. And it was, do loan moves actually work? And I think that's kind of a big question. So I'm going to interpret it a little bit specifically and say maybe we could talk specifically about young players, maybe specifically American players, maybe specifically American players named Christian Pulisic who play for Borussia Dortmund.
Oh, yeah, so the rumor today in Bild, the German magazine, a new tabloid, is that Christian Pulisic is possibly going on loan to either CSKA Moscow in Russia, Stoke City in England, or Red Bull Leipzig in Germany. There's three very different teams.
They are. And I want to talk about those. But I also want to do one quick aside to say, are we just going to call him Christian Pulisic? Is that what you and I have decided? Because I've really tried to go with Pulisic, because I know that's how he pronounces it. But it just seems like such an intentional thing to have to do, and we end up defaulting to Pulisic every time.
I'm going to try Pulisic.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay. You sure with that?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to keep trying.
Okay. All right, so we're going Pulisic then.
Yep.
Yeah, so those are three very random teams, and I think like one makes sense, like newly promoted Bundesliga team. One makes sense in that it's Stoke Alona and they've got some Americans there. CSKA is the big outlier. But regardless, I think you could look at it.
None of them are Borussia Dortmund.
Exactly. So none of them are the club where he's currently playing, where he's currently developing, where he's already gotten first team minutes, where there are other young teenagers who are doing the exact same thing.
And it's not just Christian Pulisic. It could be other Americans who are sort of young players at big teams who we want to see in the first team.
Right.
But there are maybe some players between them and the first team now, some World Cup winners in Pulisic's case, right? Like Schürrle and Götze have joined. And you look at, say, Gideon Zelalem at Arsenal. He's considering, is he going on a loan this season or is he going to stay with the first team? So we can think about this as, do loan moves work for young players looking to break into a first team? Is it, like, if you get loaned out, is that a sign that you're failing? You're failing, so go do it somewhere else? Or is it a sign, or is it a thing that's positive because it might lead to the first team one day?
Yeah. And I think it's tough to say, like, blanket approach, but I would say I think I've come up with two divisions. And I think in the case of Zelalem, in the case of Pulisic, those are players who, yes, are obviously not like native to that area.
Right.
Well, I don't know about Zelalem, but Pulisic isn't. But then make that move, are in the academy system from a young age and grow up through the academy.
Zelalem's native to Maryland.
There we are. Whereas, say, DeAndre Yedlin, for example, is a guy who comes in, is young and is unproven, but he moves into a bigger club. Matt Alasunde as well, moving to Manchester United. It's younger guys who are coming in maybe later on, and it doesn't feel like those guys have much of a chance, whereas Christian Pulisic, all of a sudden, is it's like young kid who's at Dortmund, has been playing there for years, and is coming through and is now getting minutes. Like, I think there's that difference already.
So which is better and which is worse? Like, which do you read more positively?
I think I read more positive is Zelalem and Pulisic, where it's sort of like the scouts at an early age identified something, saw something in these players, and have stuck with these players to the point where they're still involved, still getting minutes to some extent, or getting consideration to some extent. Honestly, I feel like DeAndre Yedlin moving to Tottenham, we never really felt like he was going to be that starting right back for them. We never felt like he was going to be the guy for them.
So it was, after the World Cup 2014, so I believe he'd be like 22. You're already more or less a grown-up at 22, right? So there's not that much more development to do. So he was either going to go straight into that Tottenham team, or what they did was they sent him on loan to Seattle, then pulled him in, had him just train for 6 months, then again, and then on loan to Sunderland. At the time, that felt like, yes, Yedlin's going to get some minutes, but also it means he's not going to be first choice at Tottenham anytime soon.
And I think with those sorts of moves, when it's a young player brought to a bigger club, and now it's like, maybe you're 21, maybe you go out on loan.
Yeah.
And especially if it's go out on loan with an option to buy, that definitely means they're no longer in consideration. Yeah. With Pulisic, however...
And Zelalem, both teenagers.
Because you could say, like...
I think Zelalem's still a teenager.
I think so. But with Pulisic, I'm sticking with him. You could say it's a shame if they do want to loan him out, because you've got other youngsters in there like Emre Mor and Ousmane Dembele who are going to be challenging for first-team minutes. And I think that's the key difference, is that they're going to be challenging for first-team minutes. Maybe they say Pulisic shouldn't have to be challenging at this point. Yeah. Maybe he's ready, but we just have too much depth.
Yep.
So let's send him to a place where he starts every single game, plays a ton of minutes, and comes back really ready to go next season.
The one way to think about this is maybe if you had never heard of Christian Pulisic, and say he goes on loan to Red Bull Leipzig, who are in the Bundesliga, the top division this season.
Are they not Red Bull, though? Aren't they something else?
Oh, it's like Lawn Sport, so it's RB, but it's like, I can't remember the...
RB Leipzig, it is,
If you just randomly heard about a 17-year-old American teenager who's playing for Leipzig in the Bundesliga, you'd be real excited, right? So maybe just if you try and divorce it from his initial situation, just think, is this a good situation for a young American teenager? Can you look at it that way?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's the way to look at it. And so then I think you can then evaluate it as, is he going there? Is he getting minutes? Is it a thing that's going to either move his career forward because he'll go back to Dortmund and be stronger, or move his career forward because then RB Leipzig will say, no, we absolutely have to keep this kid. We will pay whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And then he becomes a regular starter for a club that is in the Bundesliga and looking to stay there permanently, obviously, since they're splashing some cash.
And there's always the thing where you can go down to come back up again. You think of Pogba going away from Manchester United because he couldn't break the first team, goes to Juventus. It essentially ends up being a very expensive reverse loan deal for Man United.
Yeah.
And then comes back, right? Think of who recently, Matic, Chelsea, sold somewhere else, comes back. Sometimes you maybe have to take a step down just to be able to break into the first team when you're a younger player, get the experience, and then you can come back around.
I think it's sort of, we talked about like making a decision earlier on, you and I did off air, and then how like once you've made that decision, it can kind of alleviate some stress.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're talking about transfers though.
Yeah.
Whereas a loan deal in those situations can sort of feel like with Yedlin, it's like great, he's going to Sunderland, he's getting minutes. But I still don't think that either one of us were like, and then he's going to go back to Tottenham and really push Kyle Walker for that starting spot.
The future's uncertain, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
that's the difference there. But I think it can still, with all of that said, I don't mind that move because it means that he can become valuable to that club that he moves to, that he's on loan to. But he can also prove his value to the club and go back and make something out of it.
Yeah. So for me, loan moves work. So if Christian Pulisic gets loaned and plays, and then goes back to Dortmund, a stronger, more experienced player, it's worked.
Yeah.
Zelalem, I believe, even though he had ups and downs at Rangers, has gone back to Arsenal, a stronger, more established, more experienced player, because prior to this season, these guys have never played a full season and started many, many games. Even Pulisic, for all that we celebrate him, has never sort of played regularly 90 minutes for Dortmund, right? It's been often 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there.
I also would point out, though, and I think this is like the thing that maybe can put blinders on, it does for me, is that there's sometimes a reason why the loan doesn't work. And, like, there's a reason why he's going on loan in the first place. Like, Zelalem, if he goes to Rangers and just looks completely outclassed, there's a reason why Arsenal are then like, you can go somewhere else again on loan. It's because he's not performing.
He definitely didn't dominate in Glasgow.
Well, but he didn't look terrible either. It's definitely a much more physical league. You can tell he was sent there to get tougher, right?
Get some bruises.
But I think you have these ones that stand out in your head if you're a US fan, like Julian Green, for example, where it's like, he's going to Hamburg because they're a step down from Bayern Munich. He's going to then get minutes, and then he's going to go back to Bayern, and then he goes to Hamburg, and they're like, no, you're going to play for our reserve team.
That's when it's a problem. Excuse me. It's a problem when you step down a level, but then sort of still not quite. You still found wanting at that level.
Yes.
Then you're like, maybe he's not good enough.
Yes,
and so at least at the time. Now Julian Green seems to be.
And I think, I've stumbled upon this, at least for me personally, that like, I tend to see it as like, it didn't work because the club failed, or like, it didn't work because the manager didn't believe in him. And I kind of don't see it as like the other way around, which is there's a reason why the manager didn't believe in him. There's a reason why he doesn't fit the system. And maybe that's the point you should get out of the loan, is that the club sends him there to say, can you adapt? Can you up your game? Can you perform in a new situation under pressure? Because that's what we need to see from you going forward. And if you can't, well, then you can't.
So here's what I want to come down on. Loan moves don't always work.
No.
But they are usually...
They don't always not work either.
They don't always not work. But they are usually the right move if you're not getting first-team minutes. Because no matter how good someone's facilities, someone's academy, someone's training system is... I know Dortmund have got that, like... I've forgotten what it's called. It's like the Interatron thing where you can bounce the ball up. There is no substitute for playing first-team football in a top-level professional league.
Right.
So if Christian Pulisic can go to Leipzig or even to CSKA Moscow, top Russian Premier League, or Stoke City, and get regular minutes more than he would have at Dortmund, I think that's a positive thing.
Agreed.
All those in favour?
Yeah, hands in the air.
Yeah.
Nothing better on a podcast than silent hands in the air. What can go wrong? I can vouch for that for when we do the Kickers games and you say something that I agree with and I forget that we're doing it live on air and I just nod and then I'm sure you're like, thanks for that. That's real helpful.
All right, Patrick, we hope we've answered your question. If we have not, or if you intended something different, please let us know. All right, next question comes from Nat. Nat Soti asks, considering soccer is such an international game with players from many countries playing on the same team, with managers of different nationalities coaching them, is there a, quote, standard language that is spoken? He's thinking like Esperanto type thing. So in what language do players speak to each other? And, for example, does Jurgen Klopp coach in German when at Dortmund, but now in English when he's at Liverpool?
My answer to that is that yes, Klopp coached in German at Dortmund, and I think now someone, if not him, coaches in English at Liverpool.
Yeah, I think it's Klopp. I've seen him in interviews. I've seen him talking to... Actually, no, I've seen him shouting at players from the sidelines in English.
Yeah.
So The basic answer to me is you speak the language of the country you are in.
Yes.
Right?
And if you can't speak it, you have a translator. That's usually it. Or you have the assistant who the translator conveys what you're trying to do, and then that assistant runs training and gets the points across.
And then if you're a player and you've just moved to a new country, it's kind of on you to learn the language of that country, basically so that you can live your life day to day, but also so you can fit in with your teammates. And maybe there'd be some catching up to do. Maybe it's tough to begin with, but it's kind of what you have to do.
Yeah. I imagine, though, with that as a general rule, that there are instances like Manuel Pellegrini at Man City. Maybe if he's trying to convey something very quickly to Jesus Navas or Sergio Aguero, he's going to speak Spanish because he can get that point across faster.
You mean Pep Guardiola?
No, I mean Manuel Pellegrini when he was there.
Yeah.
Like, I think he comes to mind because I can't remember if it was Pellegrini or Mancini who pretended like they didn't speak English for a long time because then they wouldn't get asked questions in the press conference.
It was also Fabio Capello.
Yeah, but they all spoke good English. They just didn't feel like speaking it. But I think that if you are trying to communicate something in your native language, you go with, or you're trying to communicate something quickly, you go with your native language if you need to.
Okay, so if a Spanish coach is in England, but he's got a Spanish player that he wants to say something quite nuanced or quickly to, he'll go Spanish just to get the point across as quickly as possible, right? Yeah. But when he's addressing the whole team, I would imagine it's in the language of the country.
Yeah, and I say Pellegrini specifically because I think Guardiola speaks very good English, and I think that seems to be part of his kind of mentality. Is like, no, we're doing English now. This is how it's going to be, and I'm going to do this, and then you're going to do everything I say. That's kind of what I expect of you.
You also have you carry more authority if you speak the native language, right? Definitely, I think.
Because you have that moment when the player doesn't know if you speak it, and then they say something about you, and you're like, I know what you're saying about me. And it's like, oh, no, he knows.
The other thing that really got me about this question from Nat is he asked if there's a standard language that is spoken, and it got me thinking about maybe there should be something like international language of soccer, where the words for like offside and man on and short pass and long ball and throw in could all be sort of in an Esperanto kind of way standardized across all languages, and we just all agree that this is the best word. I think the best word for goal is actually Tor in German. I love the way they say that.
Oh yeah.
So I feel like that should just be established as we just take bits from every language, pick the best ones, and put them all together, and we say, okay, this language is now called soccer.
We've talked about it before, but it's what leads to the different noises when teams score in different countries, because in England, in English-speaking countries, it tends to be yes. When you score, so everyone yells yeah, and it has that, like, you can imagine what it sounds like when a crowd yells yeah, versus Germany, Turkey, where they yell tor or goal. It's that like deeper resonance, and so I feel like that deeper resonance can be a little bit better at times. So maybe you're right. Maybe you're onto something. We need a universal way to cheer for things and say things. And the final thing I'd say is I think groups of players, if you have like 3 Frenchmen or 3 Spaniards, they might communicate on the field in Spanish. But I think the generally accepted thing is that if those 3 French players are playing in Spain, then they are probably communicating in French until they're talking to their whole team, and then it's Spanish.
So the problem comes when, like, you've got, say you're in Spain, you've got, this is an imaginary team, right? So you've got a Spanish right back, a French goalkeeper, French centre backs, and a French left back. It must be tempting for those, like, 3 plus goalkeeper French players to start speaking French and accidentally leave the Spanish guy out.
Yeah, probably. And I do think footballers, generally speaking, and I say footballers because now we're talking about Europeans, are good at languages. I think like once you're around and moving as much as they are and experiencing different cultures as much as they do, I think you get better at speaking languages.
I think that's true.
But I also think there's a reason why I have always heard soccer called like the global language. It's because I could have conversations with people in different countries where I did not speak the language about soccer, and they didn't speak the language that I was speaking. Yeah. But it's kind of the same, like, you know the player names, you generally know like forward or attack or defense. You can kind of get those. And then, like, kick, shoot, man on. Like, it kind of, I think, is kind of all universal-ish.
It's a lot of gesturing as well, right?
That's very true.
The centre-backs can be saying, everybody step up. But, I mean, obviously listeners can't see me, but I'm waving my arms forward. That has a very clear message. Yeah. Right?
And I mean...
I've had some Sundays where that message wasn't received by people, but it's mostly a very clear message to wave people forward.
But you'd be surprised for people who, like, haven't played much, how quickly you start doing that. Because I've played in games where the back four was not English-speaking, and you kind of very quickly learn what are the 4 words I need to say in Turkish to convey get forward, you've got a person coming, mark him, and you kind of learn to pick up on that and speak it very quickly. So I think in terms of game language, it's easier to do than people might think.
I'd be using the one Turkish word I know, which is medhava.
Merhaba.
Yeah. I'd just be saying hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
There you
I'd
go.
be like Anyang.
Yep, Anyang. This insufferable child.
All right, final question for today
Yeah.
comes from Drew. Drew, who I'm going to assume from his email address is a Bills fan, so I'm
Yep.
going to guess he's in Buffalo.
Yep.
Drew says, I've never played soccer before, but have fallen in love with the game the last few years. We've got another one. Your Rec League podcast, which was from last Wednesday, got me wondering, if I were to join a Rec League, what would be my best position? Mm-hmm. All right, tell us something about yourself, Drew. And he does. In my mid-20s, he's 6'3", he's 230 pounds. He says, I'm faster and quicker than most guys 50 or 60 pounds lighter than me. I'd like to be a forward, who wouldn't, but my ball skills are poor and I don't think I'd be much more than a target for crosses. Would my size and speed make me a better defender who could muscle smaller players off the ball? I don't want to go out there and look like a complete fool.
Yep. None of us ever do.
All right, so what do you recommend based on Drew's, we'll call it profile?
I think, first of all, it in terms of it depends on what you want to get out of this. If you want to become a better player, I think he's right that if you're a big guy up top, people are just going to kick the ball at you. It's not going to really help you develop. It's just going to be your big guy that people can aim for.
Also worth remembering, if you play up top on a team, you probably see less of the ball than any other player. Right? You probably get fewer touches up top because you're marked more closely. You're in such a dangerous spot. There's a chance you don't see the ball very often.
Right, and there's a chance that also you especially don't see it if you don't kind of know what you're doing. Because you got to. I mean, because it's true that if you just stand there, if you're big, yeah, they'll aim the ball for you. But a big part of it is making the smart run into the channel or bending a run behind the defender to get in. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't played very much, you might not be as familiar with how to do that. Mm-hmm. So I would say, yeah, his inclination is correct that maybe a big center back is a good place to start.
See, I'm not so convinced because I feel like the way he phrases it as
muscle people off the ball.
My size and speed make me a defender who could muscle smaller players off the ball. I see Drew giving a lot of penalties away, right? Because if you're just thinking, I'm big, I'm fast, I'm going to knock you over, that's a lot of free kicks and fouls and penalty kicks.
I would actually rather have that than a player who's small and fast. Because then it becomes like, I can just go to ground quickly. I can go in for the slide tackle quickly. And that's where you start conceding the penalties. Like shoulder to shoulder, you're less likely to concede the foul. That said, Drew should prepare himself for at least a season of you're way bigger than the guy that you just shouldered off the ball. And even though it was 50-50 shoulder-shoulder, you're conceding the foul.
That's the other thing. I have gone for 50-50 balls with players sort of smaller and lighter than me, not fouled them, but conceded the free kick just because I was bigger. Yeah, right. That absolutely happens. But I would say so I just want to make clear that if Drew is going to play defence, there's still defensive skills you're going to have to learn.
Right, and I think that's the key point. That's why I would say I think starting in defence, because I do think, not saying that the defending is easier, but I think that you can pick up on the key points of it more readily because you're reacting to things, right? You're not having to create things. So you can learn like, this guy's coming across, I mark him, I'm going to win this header, I need to step up, and I need to know when to drop back. You can figure those things out and then maybe work your way up the field if you want to. Mm-hmm. But I think that's like defense allows you to react to things and then start to read the game a little bit better.
So even though Drew's big, right, 6'3", 230 pounds, would he be better off starting at fullback maybe? And then he could maybe get forward and use that speed to, get down the line.
Yeah, maybe. But I think that is no disrespect to my center backs. But if you're that fullback who's getting forward, you're going to need a touch. You're going to need to work on your overall skill. Yeah. And that is my biggest advice to anybody. Fitness is important, obviously. But people really, myself included, when I was 12, I've talked about it before. I was like, juggling is dumb. It's not. It's really, really useful. Because developing that touch, developing a first touch, knowing how to dribble with the ball and keep it under control and not dribble straight out of bounds or dribble 20 yards in front of you and then allow a counterattack, it's very, very important.
One thing I just realised, Drew's going straight to Rec League soccer.
Yeah.
There's an in-between stop, which is pick-up soccer. I don't know if Drew's maybe not considered this or just didn't mention it in the email. Maybe the thing to do is go to a pick-up game and then you can sort of, because it's usually not very organised and not a formation, you can just randomly decide, right, I'm going to play defence for 10 minutes. And then you don't even have to tell anyone. You can just wander up and play midfield for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can just pick your spots and see what happens. And I think then you'll get a feel for where you feel most comfortable and where you feel most effective.
I was in Buffalo recently. They're young, athletic people all over the place. I'd say there's probably some pickup games.
Yeah.
I was in East Aurora as well, Drew, if that resonates at all. East Aurora.
Sounds nice.
It's like 20 minutes outside of Buffalo. And again, young, fit people there too. So I think maybe there's some pickup games to be found.
All right, Drew, please, when you decide and if you delve in and start playing, please let us know where you decide to play and how it goes. If anyone else has questions for us, the email address is contact@totalsoccershow.com. And if you go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe and you support the show, if you subscribe at $10 a month or higher, we guarantee to answer one question a month on the show.
And Drew, best of luck to the Toronto Bills this season.
The Toronto Bills?
Yes.
What's that?
It's the Buffalo Bills when they play their home games away in Toronto.
All right, speaking of touch, Taylor,
yes,
we've been working on our touch because today's episode is sponsored by FUTCHI.
Yep.
FUTCHI Rebounders. We mentioned this a couple of times, but we went down to Browns Island here in Richmond, Virginia, and we played a long morning and a bit of an afternoon of FUTCHI in the sun. We recorded it. We edited it. We published it yesterday. The link to our FUTCHI video will be in the show notes.
And here's the problem that I've realized about the two of us, Daryl Grove, is that we enjoy playing soccer, generally speaking, and FUTCHI does make it legitimately fun because you're kind of in a contained space, it seems, but you are having to run so much and chase the ball when you inevitably hit it over.
And sorry, we should explain to people that FUTCHI is a rebounder, and it's soccer meets squash. So you take it in turns to play the ball against the rebounder, it comes back out, lands in the court, it bounces or doesn't, the opponent tries to return it.
Yes, but I feel like frequently because it just seems like, we'll just get a quick warm-up going, then we'll set up the camera, figure out what we're going to do. Our quick warm-up turns into like an hour and a half of like playing, and then all of a sudden it's 90 degrees and we've been out there for an hour and a half, and then we're like, oh boy, we got to set up the camera and give this thing a go. So it's very addictive. It can just be less ideal if it's addictive and then you have to do stuff afterwards.
That is true.
Yeah.
This wasn't our first rodeo though, right?
No.
So this video is titled 10 Things We Learned Playing FUTCHI. There are literally 10 examples of things we learned while playing FUTCHI in this video. I put this together, so I'm thinking I maybe know the things. Do you remember them, Taylor? When we played FUTCHI, when we see this video, what are the 10 things that we learned from playing FUTCHI?
I won't remember all of them, but there's some that
Give me three.
I mean, there's like diving headers might look good, but they're not necessarily the most functional.
Yeah, because you end up lying face first on the floor. If you see the video, I do attempt a bicycle kick after it and come real close. Real close.
In the sense that it leads to me cackling in the background. Yes, real close. I mean, so there's that key point. There's also the key point that a fully assembled FUTCHI rebounder is a beautiful sight. That's a good one.
It really is. You see the tension in the net. Yeah.
But I think the one that stands out to me is the stuff that I can't tell if it's something you're doing in the game. Like if you've picked up on this tactic, but it's like if you see your opponent drifting left, play it this way. And I was like, wait, what? Like, he has that awareness? Because I do not. Because I know there's a few that you attributed to me of like, hit it low or do this thing. I'm like, I'm just doing that because I'm just hoping to get it into the net.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought this was like a tactical thing that you were doing.
Or maybe it is, and now I'm playing the mental mind games.
So one of the things we talked about was, if you see your opponent play the ball and then go to the left, then obviously you play the ball to bounce it to go to the right.
Yep.
Then that guy's got to run to get it.
Yep.
Naming no names. And you have a good tactic of you will hit it, because if you strike the centre of the net, it tends to bounce back farther, right? So you end up making me chase it back far, but then you'll like just head it gently down low, and where it just bounces low.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the plan. That's the plan. And then I make you sprawl and try to do scorpion kicks and bicycle kicks.
I will always, my last resort is always try and rely on long legs and just try and get there.
I think that's the still shot, is something about your long legs.
I didn't choose that.
Even if you have long legs.
Yeah, it will randomly generate a sort of a still image for your YouTube videos.
Yep.
The one it chose for this was, even his long legs won't save him.
Yeah.
It's me sprawled out on the floor.
I think number 11, which wasn't included in the video, is when it's super hot, don't put yourself... It seems smart to put yourself next to a body of water, but I feel like all that means is like you're low down, which just means crazy humidity.
Because it reflects off and picks up.
Yeah, and I think just it picks it up, and then you're kind of in an exposed area with not a lot of trees. It doesn't really lend itself to like cool, comfortable soccer playing.
All right, well, we'll pick a new location next time. How about we go high next time, up to Jefferson Park, maybe?
The Rockies?
The Rockies, yeah. We'll make a big trip to the Rockies.
Cool.
So yeah, our next FUTCHI game, we're going to record that maybe this week or next week, and we'll get that out. But this video, 10 things we learned, you can find on YouTube, youtube.com/TotalSoccerShow. You can also find in the link in the show notes of this episode.
Yep.
Thank you to FUTCHI for sponsoring this episode. If you would like to buy yourself a FUTCHI Rebounder, you get 15% off by using the coupon Total Soccer.
All lowercase, all one word.
All lowercase, all one word. Total Soccer will get you 15% off. off.
And again, that's FUTCHI is FUTCHI.
FUTCHI.com.
Yes, sir.
Thank you to FUTCHI for sponsoring this episode.
And thank you to everyone who decided to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network. We've been getting many reports on a consistent basis.
This is really exciting for us because the more people sign up for the Scouting Network, the more people send us reports. It means that we're growing the show. It means that we are getting closer to our goal of going full-time professional with the Total Soccer Show. Right now, I know we're doing 5 days a week, but we're also working other jobs.
Yes.
So we're making this happen. But the more people subscribe, the more we can make this the only thing we do.
Is plan.
With 2 L's.
Yes. Yep. So, we've got a few reports today. Some quick hits, some longer. Let's start with one from Julie Nishimura-Jensen, scouting Alen Halilovic, a man I know is close to your heart.
I've been waiting for this scouting report because I saw it on Twitter when it happened.
Julie reports that Halilovic did a serviceable Leo Messi impression in Hamburg's German Cup match against FC Zwickau. He came on the 63rd minute and scored a lovely goal in their 1-0 win. Also of note, Bobby Wood started, played 90 minutes, and Julie assumes was the one making a far post run when Halilovic scored.
I think he is, yeah.
It absolutely was. And I have to say, I feel like I've watched way too much soccer lately on way too intricate of a level, but the run he makes is the run that I wish Jordan Morris would make on a consistent basis.
Oh, why's that?
Because remember we talked about in the Seattle game how in that final third when Seattle are possessing, he has to try to find a way to make a run, Jordan Morris does, and it tends to just be like a drifting one to the back post.
Yeah.
Bobby Woods is this kind of jagged run that he keeps kind of squaring himself in case there's going to be a pass, but he also drifts to the back post. So he's there to frame, but he also takes a defender away. But it's a very intelligent run that's very intentional in what he's trying to accomplish.
It also helps when Halilovic is your teammate.
And hits a screamer from, 30 yards out?
Yeah. It's basically a cross between Modric and Leo Messi.
You're talking about because he has Modric's beautiful hair?
Yeah. And Messi's kind of Messi's dribbling style, it seems like to me.
And that's what Julie Nishimura-Jensen was pointing out, is that he keeps the ball so tight on his foot that he's able to react really quickly, get shots off really quickly, and surprise defenders very quickly.
And still just a young gun. He's really one to watch and get excited about. I'm so happy that he's Bobby Wood's teammate this season.
Speaking of youngsters who are ones to watch and get excited about, Kat Prickett, scouting Tyler Turner, says Orlando City B is coming to Richmond this weekend, and Kat reports that we may not see a lot of him. Orlando's 21-year-old Rafael Ramos is on loan to Orlando City B while recovering from a hamstring injury. He started at right back in place of Turner against the Kickers last Sunday. When Turner came on for Ramos at halftime, Richmond found joy coming down the Ramos list, Turner full side to get a tying goal in the 53rd minute. The game ended in a 1-1 draw, meaning we may see Ramos instead of Tyler at City Stadium on Saturday.
So, Taylor and I will be at City Stadium because we'll be doing the commentary for the Richmond Kickers against Orlando. One of the things I was looking forward to was getting an up-close look at Tyler Turner, who is, I believe, a US youth international and a big part of this Orlando B team. I'm going to be kind of disappointed if Rafael Ramos, on loan, essentially, to the B team, getting fitness, takes minutes away from Turner. Takes my minutes watching Turner away.
Yeah, because we've gotten to watch a few, and it's always really exciting when all of a sudden this player that we're like, we've been getting reports on him, or we've heard of him, shows up, and then they're on the bench, or not even on the bench. So let's hope Turner makes that bench, or at least starts. Or at least makes the bench or starts.
Yeah, okay.
That'd be ideal.
Up next, Willie Reed is scouting Jesus Vallejo, who I believe was a Real Madrid defender.
Yep.
Willie says the 19-year-old centre-back has been sent out on a year-long loan to Eintracht Frankfurt from Real Madrid after being bought and loaned back to Real Zaragoza last season. So this is where maybe Matt Miazga was rumoured to be going, right? He was going to be on loan to Eintracht Frankfurt, so that's probably not happening now because they have Jesus Vallejo.
Yeah, that Premier League move that was definitely happening has not yet happened for Matt Miazga. Worrying signs, potentially.
There's still a week in the transfer window.
Yep.
Fingers crossed.
A player who will definitely not be moving this season, but might next season, is Kieran Trippier, scouted by Trevor McDonnell. Trippier has been playing left centre-back in Brendan Rodgers' 3-5-1-1 formation for Celtic.
Yeah, sounds like a 3-6-1 to me.
Sure does. He played both games of the young domestic season and is also getting Champions League action to boot. He's also been called up to the senior Scotland team for their September 4th match against Malta.
Good for Scottish fans because it's been a rough summer watching every other sort of British team play at Euro 2016. So having a young player like Kieran Trippier is something to get excited about.
Agreed. Then we got some quick hits here for you. Joe Martella scouting Martin Odegaard of Real Madrid Castilla. Rumors of a loan move to either Rennes or Stade Rennais in France, but FIFA regulations prevent U18 players from going on loan to a different country.
So Odegaard not going anywhere until at least he turns 18.
is true. Eddie Youngs is scouting Aymeric Laporte, who I know you are quite fond of, Mr. Grove. After being sidelined for several months with an ankle injury, Laporte was back in Athletic Bilbao's starting 11 for the first game of the La Liga season.
Great.
John Adams, scouting Shayon Harrison. Shayon scored his first goal for Tottenham's Premier League 2 squad. He blocked a keeper's clearance into the back of the net. As John writes, not the prettiest of goals, but a goal's a goal.
We also have Michael Curry scouting Haji Wright. It says Haji played 88 minutes in the Schalke U19 match between Schalke and Fortuna Düsseldorf. Schalke won 3-0 and Wright assisted on all 3 goals, a hat-trick of assists.
Taylor Williams is scouting James Weir. It says Weir started as a lone striker, which isn't his natural position, in Manchester United's 2-0 Premier League 2 loss.
Matthew Shea is scouting Alessia Romagnoli, the centre-back. He says Romagnoli crushed Adam Lalic, who needed medical attention, in Milan's season opener against Torino and helped his side in a dramatic 3-2 Serie A victory.
Which Matthew says was already the best match of the entire Serie A season.
Is that right?
Well, in the sense that it's the first week and was the best match of the first weekend, yes.
Can we talk a little more about Odegaard?
Sure.
This is a thing that has been kind of fascinating. So do you remember Ancelotti, after he left Madrid, said that basically
it was a PR
signing
move, right?
Odegaard, this 16-year-old Norwegian, was just a PR move. Yeah. And then he's in the B team, or Real Madrid Castillo, but training with the first team because that was in his contract, and now he can't go on loan. It really feels like Odegaard has made a huge mistake.
I think he might be one of the...
To paraphrase Arrested Development again.
Yes. I think he might be one of the few players who was really unhappy when Zinedine Zidane got that job. Because it was Zidane who was coaching that B team. Zidane who was frustrated that this provision in his contract said he has to train with the first team, so he's missing opportunities to train with his Real Madrid
teammates.
B. Yeah. And so then you don't get the consistency that you would need going into games. So he was really inconsistent, really kind of out of it, not sure what the team was trying to do, and refusing to train. And now that coach is the coach of Real Madrid. If you're Odegaard, you must be like, I maybe made the wrong guy, a little bit annoyed.
I think what he should have done is thought long-term and thought, well, this guy's probably going to be the next Real Madrid coach, right? Because it was always rumoured that whoever... It was Benitez before, right? But whatever happened next, Zidane was going to be probably the next coach. I'm only 16. Maybe you should have thought, I've got a real chance to work with this guy and impress him.
But instead, believe the hype.
Yeah, instead he wanted the guarantee of first-team practice.
Yeah. And I guess it is one of those frustrating situations where if he demands first-team practice and then everyone's like, oh, no, you're too young, and then he goes out there and blows everyone away, then the story is like, wow, this kid, he knew how good he was. Like, what swagger he has. But then if you demand first-team training and you go out there and it doesn't really work and things struggle, then it's like, oh, he's so arrogant. He really doesn't know where he is in the world.
I feel like he tried to skip right to the top as well, right? So he'd gone from Norwegian domestic soccer. There should be some middle ground, like if playing for a French team maybe. Instead of going from that to one of the biggest clubs in the world, to Real Madrid, there's a whole middle section missing there.
And so to bring it full circle, I get what Ancelotti means, but I don't necessarily believe him. Like I get the idea that signing this player, you know you're going to get headlines, you know it's going to attract attention. But he was highly touted for a reason. Like, there's a reason why they went after him. And it kind of goes back to the loan move conversation we had, where you can bring in this young player for a minimal fee.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But you've got a lot of headlines for recruiting young players.
But do you remember the signing? He had like a whole introduction
unveiling
at the stadium as if he was as if when they signed Ronaldo or Bale. You know what I'm saying? So there was a mini Galactico.
Yeah. But when you're that hyped of a youngster, maybe you merit that.
Or maybe you don't because he hasn't played.
Well,
I'm saying this has not gone well.
Yeah, I think most people would agree. Martin Odegaard chief among them. Yeah.
But he will turn 18, I think, early next year, and then he will be eligible then to maybe get a loan move to Stade Rennais or to Rennes, which I believe it was Rennes because it's Michael Silvestre, right, who's the director there, or sporting director, who broke the story that he can't do it because he's under 18. Someone somewhere has mistranslated that to Stade Rennais. There's a lazy journalist somewhere who's responsible for then a lot of articles that sourced his article or her article.
Or somebody was having a conversation and somebody else was overpronouncing French words. It's like he wants to go to Rennais. And then Stade Rennais. Okay, cool, got it. Let me write that down real fast and not fact check.
Thank you to all of our scouts for sending in scouting reports. Thank you to all of our questioners for sending in questions. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed.
You want to go with Inquisitors? That's what you were getting.
Inquisitors.
Yeah.
Thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the Total Soccer Show. Thank you to Taylor Rockwell for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
We will be back on Thursday with our Bundesliga preview, talking US men's national team players. Until then, it is goodbye from us.